TCU defense reportedly got the better of the TCU offense in practice on Monday. Is that a reason for concern? We'll talk about that next on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. You can subscribe to the show on YouTube, the YouTube channel. You can also subscribe wherever you get podcasts in its audio form. Spring practice is in full swing. We're also going to talk some basketball and baseball later on the show, but we start with TCU football as spring practice continues to roll along. On Monday, the team was on the field again. And reportedly, the defense got the better of the offense yesterday. Steven Johnson from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram reported that there were 5 interceptions by TCU DBs during practice yesterday. Also, there were a few sacks. Sonny Dykes said afterwards, he held a press conference with the assembled media there and said, hey, the biggest difference between last season and this season, as far as what we're seeing from the defense, is there's more consistent pressure on the quarterback in practice every day. And that set off some alarm bells for people. And listen, I totally get it. There was so much hype around last season, and I think that was mostly deserved. Now, some people after the season was over came out and said, hey, we were all especially coming at me, but a lot of us were homers last year. We kind of bought into the hype after that national championship appearance. We didn't account for all the people that they lost. We didn't account for all the transition that was happening within the team, within the roster, and that's why they finished 5-7 and we weren't expecting it. But I know for a lot of TCU fans, it's tougher to buy in this season because you feel like you got burned a little bit last year. And there were a lot of things that you heard about, namely that Chandler Morris was going to step in and be the guy and have a great season. And I think we all wanted that for him. It didn't really work out, and then he got injured and eventually got replaced by Josh Hoover. Josh Hoover's not practicing right now. He's out with an injury. But the defense is getting pressure. They forced some turnovers yesterday. So what does that mean? Does it say some good things about the defensive line that they're able to get to the QB? Is it concerning for the O-line that they're not able to protect? I think it's mostly encouraging for the defensive line. Here are the reasons why. Number one, Sonny said this is the biggest difference, with the defense from last season to this season. Last year, the TCU offensive line was not great. Now, maybe we thought they were really good going into the season, and I had my reservations about it, but ultimately I was like, I think they're going to be able to find 5 guys that can make this work. And they improved as the year went on, but especially early in the season, they struggled. They struggled in pass protection at times. They really struggled at the point of attack, running the football. The interior offensive line had a lot of issues getting push consistently in short yard situations or just in normal situations when they were trying to run the ball with Monty Bailey and Trey Sanders and Trent Battle and others that had opportunities out of the backfield last season, to the point that Kendall Briles was doing a lot of things, running to the edge, running reverse jet sweeps, trying to find a way around their issues at the point of attack. But going into last year, we thought that O-line was going to be pretty good because the offseason reports were solid. And, yeah, they had shuffled some guys around, but for the most part, it seemed like they were able to keep the QBs clean during practice. They were making plays. This year, the defensive line is getting to the quarterback more, and I think that's encouraging news for the defensive line. And I feel like what it speaks to mostly is the fact that Andy Avalos runs a more aggressive defense, a different defense, and a defense that's going to give offenses a lot of different looks. You have the stud linebacker position now where you got somebody coming off the edge. You're going to have more 4- and 5-man fronts. And so hopefully this is really good for the offensive line to see these different looks in practice. You're also dealing with an offensive line that's shuffling people around, that has a lot of new faces, whether that's transfers or guys that are getting significant reps for the first time. You're still figuring out who's going to be where. And so this is good baptism by fire to a certain extent of okay, here's a lot of different formations, a lot of different situations where you have to communicate, where you have to find the person that you're going to pick up and be able to block it well and not allow free runners and not allow people to just get straight to the quarterback in different scenarios. It also should be helpful for your QBs, even though it stinks that Josh is not getting to see it much, at least on the field. I'm sure he's getting the mental reps of watching it on film and then on the field as well. But it's good for Ken Seals and Haas Haney to get different looks and different situations from the defense, different coverages that they can identify in practice that hopefully makes them more ready for when the games start. But I think this defensive line can end up being pretty good. You know, there's some good pass rushers here. Paul Wale showed some flashes last season. I'm interested to see some guys that have been in a more conservative defense be let loose a little bit more. Marcel Brooks is making some plays. I said this a couple days ago. I was like, hey, I don't know if we can fall for the Marcel Brooks experience again. And it's nothing against him. It's just he simply hasn't been able to stay healthy for the most part. And so last few years we've talked about, could this guy be an X factor? Could he be somebody on the defense that can make plays? And I think on that team that had a great run, he did. You know, I remember that game against Kansas where he made a huge tackle on a little swing pass on that final drive to help seal that victory. Against Oklahoma, he had some good plays. He flashed at times, but he also dealt with injury. Last season, same story, dealt with some injuries. When he was on the field, he was effective. But he's in a more natural position for himself now than he ever really has been as basically a situational edge rusher. And he can use his athleticism to get to the QB. He's doing that right now. And if he's able to do that from time to time, that can make a huge difference. Now, I still think like Jonathan Bax, Devin Deal, Cooper McDonald, those are going to be the guys that are playing the majority of the reps at that spot. But he's got a great opportunity here right now. While those players are, you know, McDonald's not here yet because he's finishing up some classes and things like that at San Diego State. But he's getting good opportunities right now in the spring to showcase what he can do. And apparently so far he's on the high level. So that's really good. 5 interceptions yesterday, though, according to Steven Johnson from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Avery Helm had a pick, Jordan Lester, Travis Broughton, and he had 2, and then Richard Toney Jr. Avery Helm, I think this corner room is good, and they've been switching in and out a lot. But Avery Helm is a guy, maybe you haven't heard a ton about him so far. I think he's your lockdown starter. I wouldn't worry about that at all. He's been playing a long time. I don't feel like he needs a ton of reps in the offseason. You know, they're going to get him the time he does, and he made a splash play yesterday. But he's a lockdown player. He's going to be great for the Frogs this year. I'm excited to see what he can do with another season, learning a new defense, but another season on campus in Fort Worth. And then that second spot's kind of up for grabs. You know, I would think Broughton would have the advantage with all his experience at Utah, but I know Lamarian James has made some waves. Richard Toney Jr. Had a few splash plays yesterday. You also got guys like Vernon Glover, Jordan Lester, so Channing Canada, who played a lot last season. So it feels like they really hit that position heavy in the portal, that and safety both, trying to get some more experience, trying to get some more depth there. And that was another thing Sonny Dykes said after practice. He was like, as we talk about differences with the defense, one was just the fact that they're getting more pressure. And then another difference was the fact that the 2s and 3s are out there and you still feel like you got a lot of good players. Like there's better depth at those positions than there have been in the past. And it seems like, okay, even when we got our 2s, 3s, and 4s out there, there's still some guys who can make some plays and can make some things happen. And he mentioned for the quarterbacks, he said both of them are doing well. He thinks both of them are ahead of schedule. Ken Seals is learning a new offense under Kendall Briles. Haas Haney is too, and Haas Haney is also just learning college football and college sports in general, but that they're both making things happen, that they are processing things well. They were careless with the ball on Monday, and they have to work on that. It kind of sounded like a throwback to a GP presser for a second, because anytime we ask Gary Patterson about quarterbacks, the first thing you mentioned always was got to take care of the football. That was, and as a defensive guy, it makes sense, right? Like he doesn't want to put his defense in bad situations. But the turnover battles, it was one of those many things. You know, the team was careless last season. They had a ton of penalties. They would turn the ball over. There were unforced errors. And that was really what hurt them more than anything. And so you have to clean that stuff up. And the QBs that are out there right now, they got to do a better job of taking care of the ball. But you don't want your defense to just get gashed every single practice, right? You want that competition. And usually early in spring practice like this, the defense is kind of ahead of the offense because the defense doesn't have to think as much. They're just kind of running their plays and their motions. The offense is trying to get timing down and all those sorts of things. It's a little bit flipped this season for TCU because you got a defense that is brand new and a lot of players that are new to the system. But you want that back and forth. So you hope that when they get out there on Wednesday, the offense responds really well, and that everybody continues to get better and continues to improve, as we only got a couple of weeks of this before things shut down and we get into summer workouts, summer off-season program, and building the roster a little bit more, and then we're right into fall camp. So exciting news, though. I think overall these are good signs and just good momentum for the defense, that they're making things happen early in spring practice, and that it seems like they're picking up on what Andy Avalos is trying to do quickly. That's going to pay huge dividends for TCU this upcoming season. When we come back, TCU basketball working the portal right now. Can they land a high-scoring guard from either Michigan or Toledo? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Let's talk about LinkedIn. We're going to talk about recruiting in a minute, trying to get talent right. And everybody, if you own a small business or if you're in charge of hiring, you know what a high-stakes job that is, high-stakes wager that is. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find qualified candidates and quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They have the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just another job board. They have a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why they're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making it easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. LinkedIn, they are the leader in finding quality candidates for your business. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free today. TCU basketball trying to rebuild the roster, get it to a place where, maybe they can get over the hump in the NCAA tournament, coming off that disappointing loss to Utah State late in the season. So where are we going? What's been the news as far as guys that are leaving in the portal that still have eligibility? Micah Peavy and Jacoby Coles have announced their intention to enter the transfer portal, so they will be presumably moving on. Both those guys are also in the draft. So, it's the new, it's cool for players, but you can put your name in the draft, see what your stock's going to be, see where you might get picked. And if it doesn't work out, you can hit the transfer portal and potentially go somewhere else. So Jacoby Coles and Micah Peavy are going to go that route. Still an opportunity that they come back to TCU, but at this moment, I wouldn't say it seems very likely. TCU also conducted a visit with Doug McDaniel, according to Jamie Plunkett from Horned Frog Blitz. McDaniel averaged 16 points and 5 assists a game last year, shot 41% from the field. Was one of the leading scorers for Michigan, shot 36% from three, so he can light it up, can score from all three levels of the offense. He also took a visit to Kansas State, so TCU in pretty high competition for him. And then Dante Maddox was also in for a visit, according to Jamie Plunkett. That was yesterday. He averaged 15 points, 4.5 rebounds, and shot 40% from three-point range. So in my mind, that's the biggest thing. You have to get more shooters on this basketball team, because even though Trey Tennyson helped and Chuck O'Bannon helped at times, those guys cooling off as the season went on really limited your spacing on the floor. And I think it hurt TCU so much in half-court situations because, you really pack the paint, and as long as you didn't allow them to get easy buckets inside, it was hard for the Frogs to score. So Maddox would be a big pickup. He was in on a visit yesterday, but high competition for him. These are the 8 schools, according to 247 High School Hoops, that are in the running along with TCU. Louisville, Creighton, Oklahoma, Xavier, Kansas, Illinois, and Michigan. So Illinois and Michigan, I think with him being a Midwest kid and those programs being fairly successful, Michigan not so much lately, but Illinois especially, those are going to be high competition for him. But they were at least able to get him in on a visit. And so that's exciting. Hopefully they can land one of those guys. They need a guard who can score and can lead the charge going into next season. I'll say something else that's kind of random too about the basketball team. So on Twitter yesterday, Isaiah Manning, who's really funny. I don't know a lot about Isaiah. He didn't play last year. I mean, I don't know a lot about his personality. He didn't play last season. He redshirted for the Frogs as a freshman. But he made a joke a few days ago that if he got one more parking ticket at TCU, that he was going to transfer along with Micah Peavy because he's so frustrated with always, having a ticket on his car. Many of you that played the TCU parking Hunger Games back in the day know that experience. And then yesterday he pulled an April Fool's joke on everybody where he put this long post together about how appreciative he was of his freshman year at TCU, but he was going to hit the transfer portal with 4 years of eligibility. He also mentioned Jamie Dixon's departure. That was all a joke, okay? So that was not real. He was just joking around. It was an April Fool's joke, which I'm not a big prankster, but I appreciate the sense of humor. But the thing that stood out to me was along with that post, he posted a video, like a 1.5-minute long video of practice highlights from this past season, which is another thing that guys do in football and basketball and hit the portal. If they don't have a lot of game tape, then they'll just get their practice tape and be like, hey, this is what I've done. This is what I got. This is what I've done at the college level against other college players in practice. Isaiah Manning looked really good in practice. Now, it's a mixtape of his best plays from practice this past season. So, you got to take it with a grain of salt. But he was crossing guys up. He was hitting threes. He was hitting mid-range jumpers. He was getting to the rim, dunking the ball. I mean, I know it's practice, but it made me excited for next season with his ability to play. Played a little defense, got a steal, got a breakaway dunk. So that's another name to know. Isaiah Manning is a young guy that they're going to be relying on. Jace Posey, another player that they're going to be relying on for this upcoming season that, they want to step up. They want to make plays. And if they do, along with a good transfer class, then you could have a really good team. And you also got some talented freshmen coming in, Micah Robinson, David Punch, Malik Delalo, Ashton Simmons. So this is going to be a young team, like the core of it. You got a lot of young players that potentially will be getting playing time. And it's been a while since we've seen a Jamie Dixon team constructed like that. I mean, really since they reworked their roster around Mike Miles in the portal a few years ago, they've suddenly become a team that's just had a ton of experience. They were one of the oldest teams in college basketball last season. Didn't always play like it. Even though, I think it's hard. Like, people would use that as a judgment against Dixon, and I get it. Like, I wasn't happy with how the season ended. I will say, though, like, yes, that was an older team. It was also a lot of those guys' first time to play together. So it wasn't like it was a team of seniors that had played with each other for 2 or 3 years. And the fact is you just don't really get that in college basketball anymore, right? Like that's not how it works with the portal and with all the guys that go to the NBA early. The roster's changing over each and every year. But Doug McDaniel, the transfer guard from Michigan, and then Dante Maddox, the guard from Toledo, those the two main targets so far for TCU. I think they also have heavy interest in Frankie Collins from Arizona State. So there's a lot of guys out there that you can get who can shoot, who can play, who can light it up and score. And TCU is looking to land one of those. And, I mean, I know some people might be discouraged by like, okay, these are highly rated guys. Can TCU land them? They did a good job in the portal last year. Now, we can debate and wring our hands about the fact that maybe Ernest Uday didn't end up being who we thought he could be last season. He's still got time to grow into that. Jameer Nelson Jr. Wasn't the 20-point a game scorer that we thought maybe he could be. But those were, like my point is, those were highly rated transfers that had a lot of attention from schools across the country, and TCU was able to land them. So I wouldn't just completely write them off because it's going to be a highly competitive recruitment. They've done a good job the last few cycles, especially in the portal, getting some guys who are highly ranked and getting them to campus. Now, developing them and making them into great players, that's part 2 of that. And last season wasn't a fantastic testimony, but this year maybe they can find some guys who can fit that mold a little bit more, along with some young players like Isaiah Manning, who, apparently put up some crazy numbers and did some really cool things in practice this past season. So revamping the roster. Is going to be a pretty different look when it all comes together, and I'm excited to see who they add in the coming weeks and months. When we come back, TCU baseball back in action tonight before a 3-game series against Cincinnati. That's coming up here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. eBay Motors, you got to take care of your car. You have to. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning a championship in sports. It's also what keeps your ride alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level up peak performance: superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. Over 122 million parts for your number one ride. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. A note is only available to U.S. customers. So TCU baseball, they got the sweep of Houston over the weekend. They had 21 hits on Friday. Luis Rodriguez was great. He ended up getting pitcher of the week in the Big 12. Peyton Tole has become an absolute workhorse the last 2 weeks. He threw 128 pitches, I believe, on Luis started Thursday. Peyton started Friday because of the Easter holiday. And he went 8 2/3, pitched really well. TCU scratched out enough runs to win. And then on Saturday, they won in unique fashion. They only had 2 hits, but they ended up scoring 6 runs. Houston had some errors, and TCU did a nice job situationally, getting some sack flies, finding ways to get runs across the plate when presented with opportunities. Now, the injury bug has hit this team kind of hard. Kyle Ayers, bullpen arm with electric stuff. He's out for the season with an arm injury, which stinks. Peyton Chantier, he went down with what seemed to be a hamstring issue in that game against Houston. And so he's not available right now. Brody Green has been unavailable for a long time. So they're going to have to do some shuffling here in this lineup, especially in the infield. Micah Kendrick got some action this past weekend. So maybe he's someone that can step in. The pitching staff does look to be coming together. I think, Rodriguez, Tole, and then Cole Klecker, at least for now, are going to be your 3 guys. And that's who you're going to be rolling with on the weekends moving forward. They play UTA tonight, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday against Cincinnati. They're now 5-7 in Big 12 play. And if they could win the series or get a sweep and get over 500 or a game under 500 before hitting what is going to be a tougher stretch of the schedule against Tech and Texas. Now, Texas Tech is also 5-7. They've been up and down. I believe they just got swept by UCF, but we all know who Tech is and what they can do and what they bring to the table. Glad that series is at home and not in Lubbock, because they are typically a completely different team, especially offensively, in that strong wind and smaller park there in Lubbock, Texas. But you get Tech at home and then Texas on the road. Those are going to be big series. You want to give yourself a chance to be in the mix here in the Big 12 standings, and you need to do that by picking up a series win in Cincinnati this weekend. So that Friday game is going to be at 4 o'clock, and then Sunday, I believe, is at 11 a.m., Saturday is at 1 p.m. Big series coming together here for TCU baseball. My biggest concern for this team right now is just getting more consistency in the lineup. With Tole, it appears like he's just not going to be a big part of the hitting right now. And he's been so good pitching, I think you can live with that. But that's a huge power bat you thought you would have in the lineup that you suddenly don't. And so Curtis Byrne, Anthony Silva, these guys got to start stepping up. They have to start hitting the ball better. Some of your freshmen, Chase Brunson, Ryder Robinson, have done some nice things. I wonder if Sam Myers gets some more run. Luke Boyers has been pretty solid for this team. But overall, the lineup just hasn't been consistent enough, and you have to score more runs to stay in these ball games. So looking forward to another weekend of baseball, but it starts tonight against UTA. The week does, at least. Chance to pick up another midweek win. Frogs undefeated midweek games so far this year, which has been really good since they've struggled early in Big 12 play. We'll be back tomorrow. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team, and we do it here every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast.